Good evening. Welcome to the regular meeting, February 20th, 2025, 6 p.m. Let's get started. I'd like to get started with a Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a time here for public comment. During the public comment period, members of the public may address the Planning Commission on any matter not listed on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. Do we have any public comment? Any on Zoom? Okay. We'll close public comment and start with our regular calendar. Item number 1, community development planning, rotation of chair and vice chair. Does staff have any input or questions or?
Yes, sir. It's just the regular rotation. So you move into the position of chair, and who's going to be the vice chair? Which one does it rotate? Okay.
So I'd like to move that Rory Barrett be chair and that Amelia Fleitz serve as vice chair.
I'll second that. Good. Good. Congratulations, Amelia. Yep.
Well, I mean, we did change it though. It is an election. It's not rotation anymore. So, but I think this is the perfect rotation.
And with that, I'd like to say thank you to Todd. I don't know if he's joining us. He left us quite suddenly. I will miss working with him. I thought he was a real treasure. And I look forward to working with our new commissioner, Dan Harper. And I understand we also have another opening on the board that will be addressed in short time. But with that, we'll go to item B. Community development planning minutes. Approve the minutes of September 12th, 2024 and September 26th, 2024 meetings.
So I would like to move approval of both the minutes for September 12th, 2024 and September 26th, 2024.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item three, community development planning tentative parcel map P-24-07, Lehman and Associates Consulting.
Good evening. I'm Bella Hedke. I'm the senior planner for the planning division. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Before you is, the project being heard before you is a request to approve a 2-parcel subdivision to divide a 2.06 acre parcel into 2 resulting parcels of approximately 1.11 acres and 0.95 acres. The agent is Lehman and Associates Consulting, and the applicant and property owner is the Carrington Company. The project site is located at the southeast corner of the intersection of State Highway 299 and Lanch Gulch Road in Weaverville. The project is currently undeveloped except for existing driveway access to Lanch Gulch Road and State Highway 299. No development is proposed in conjunction with this project. The Trinity County Planning Commission will consider adoption of a California Environmental Quality Act exemption pursuant to guideline section 15061B3, activities that can be seen with certainty to have no possibility for causing a significant effect on the environment. The zoning is general commercial. All agency comments have been deliberated and incorporated into project approval. The staff report provides detailed discussions as to how this project is compliant with the Subdivision Map Act, Zoning Code, General Plan, Weaverville Community Plan, and CEQA. As such, staff recommends that the Planning Commission moves to find the project to be exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to Section 15061B3, which is known as the Common Sense Exemption. And 2, adopt resolution number PC 2025-02 and approve tentative parcel map P2407 for the creation of 2 parcels for future commercial development. The applicant is not here tonight. They found it to be a non-controversial matter, so they chose not to come, but SHN is online for technical support, which helped review and prepare the staff report in conjunction with me. And I'm here tonight to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Does the commission have any questions for staff?
So I'm just curious. So I did go back and read CEQA where it talks about, there is that exemption if no development is proposed at this time. But then in the conditions, the attachment A, they're talking about, the access road construction and stuff. So just how does that work? That you say, you're proposing to put in an access road and stuff, but then you're not proposing any development?
Right. We don't have any plans, any building permits, any concepts for development that have given to us during this project. So in the event of the inevitable commercial development, since it's in a commercial area, they would be required to follow through with those conditions.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you, Bella, for the presentation. I'd like to open it up to public comment. Is there any public comment in the room? Any public comment on Zoom? Okay, so we'll close public comment and bring it back to the commission for a motion and discussion. Commissioners?
I move that the Planning Commission find the project to be exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to Section 15061B3 and adopt Resolution PC 2025-02 and approve tentative parcel map P2407 for the creation of 2 parcels for future commercial development.
I will second.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Any discussion? Or are we ready to vote? Looks like we're ready to vote.
Commissioner Flights, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fall, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Harper, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair Barrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Okay, approved, unanimous. Thank you.
Moving on to item D, number 4, adoption of mitigated negative declaration for Burnt Ranch Estates Community Water System Improvement Project, CLA-23-01.
Evening, Commissioners and Chair Barrett. My name is Patrick Flynn. I'm an Environmental Compliance Specialist with Trinity County Natural Resources Division. I'll be presenting this project to you this evening. So the item before you is CLA 23-01. It is the adoption of a mitigated negative declaration for the Burnt Ranch Estates Community Water System Improvement Project. So this evening, I'll provide a description of the project, outline the purpose and need, outline the decision that's before you and the county's role in that decision, give you a project evaluation, and then I'll review some CEQA-specific information and the project comments, and then a final recommendation for your decision this evening. So the project consists of upgrading and increasing capacity of the infrastructure that's owned and operated by the Burnt Ranch Estates Mutual Water Company. And the Burnt Ranch Estates is located in Burnt Ranch, just uphill from Burnt Ranch Elementary School. And the intent of the project is to replace 2 existing water storage tanks. These are, I'm going to refer to these herein as the upper and lower tanks. Replace all fire hydrants, all the main water distribution lines, and replace all water meters. And the project, the document before you also encompasses a potential future project phase, which will involve the retrofit of some of their other infrastructure, such as their filtration system and some of the tanks that are associated with that system. So the Burnt Ranch Estates has identified a need for upgrading this system because it's aging at this point. It was installed between 1975 and 1978. And the Burnt Ranch community is isolated, as you likely know, and sound infrastructure is essential to maintain basic services such as fire protection and running water. Additionally, the Burnt Ranch Estates Water Company has identified funding that's available from the Department of Water Resources that must be spent by the end of this calendar year, and a CEQA determination, which is before the commission this evening, is required to retain funding for that project. So specific project elements, as I mentioned, there's an upper and lower tank that's going to be replaced. The upper tank replacement is going to consist of removal of the existing tank, expansion of the existing flat for the tank, and then installation of the new tank. And about just under 11,000 square feet of area is going to be excavated or graded to make this happen. And the new tank will be 80,000 gallons, bolted steel with a concrete foundation. The lower tank, it's going to be a similar process. It will be removed, and the new tank will be put on the same location. There shouldn't be any grading or very little that's required for this tank. And the new tank, lower tank, will be 40,000 gallons in size. As I mentioned, the water lines will be replaced with a new HDPE plastic water line that includes shutoff valves and backflow devices. And the new water lines will be trenched with a backhoe and directional boring machine, and they'll be backfilled with backfill material and will be finished to pre-existing conditions, mean they'll be filled with dirt. And the hydrants and water meters will be replaced as part of the water main project stage. And then to ensure compliance with state and county regulations, as I mentioned, there is some grading required. A Trinity County grading permit and water board construction general permit are going to be obtained prior to initiation of construction. And so in addition to those 3 components, the upper and lower tank and then the water lines, there is a potential future project phase, and that involves potential replacement or expansion of the project's filtration system, which is a slow sand filtration tank. It's a concrete tank. And then potentially the chlorine treatment system and any overflow and drain piping associated with that system. And the reason that part was scoped into this project, although it's not an immediate need, was to give the water district flexibility with navigating CEQA. As we know, CEQA is expensive and takes a long time. So it was my recommendation that if they could foreseeably envision that would be something they would want to do, I suggest that they include it in this document that's before your approval today. And then the Natural Resources Division analyze the impacts for all of the components of the project, including the immediate need and the potential future project. So everything's analyzed, and if you do approve that document, if they do choose to do the future project in the future, they'll have CEQA covered already. So it was to give them some flexibility. So while I did just provide you some project details, the decision before the commission this evening is a little unique because it does not include a use permit approval. It's just the commission must simply decide as to the adequacy of the analysis that's in the mitigated negative declaration, and then adopt a resolution stating their decision. And the CEQA guidelines, section 15051, they provide guidance to local agencies and project implementers on how to choose an appropriate agency. Specifically, subsection B states that if the project is to be carried out by a non-governmental person or entity, the lead agency shall be the public agency with the greatest responsibility for supervising or approving the project as a whole. And it goes on to state that the lead agency will normally be the agency with general governmental powers, such as a city or county, rather than an agency with a single or limited purpose, such as an air pollution control district, for example. So therefore, the Natural Resources Division, which is me, agreed to be the secret lead agency for the project, analyze the impacts of the project, and then draft the appropriate environmental document, which was in this case an initial study, and then write a mitigated negative declaration, despite the fact that there's no use permit to specifically approve. So while the project does consist of replacement of existing infrastructure, which is typically an exempt action under CEQA, there is some expansion of the upper flat and some trenching associated with the water lines. So particularly the expansion of the upper flat triggers the need for a mitigated negative declaration to be drafted and approved. The environmental analysis that the Natural Resources Division conducted resulted in the need for 6 mitigation measures to be included in the document. There is one for dust control during construction. There's one to protect nesting birds. There are 2 to protect cultural resources, 1 to protect paleontological resources, and 1 to reduce noise impacts during construction. And cultural and biological resources surveys were conducted and assessments were drafted, and both of these surveys yielded a determination that there will be little to no impacts to their respective resource categories given the small scale of the project. And those reports should have been included in your meeting materials. While there was no specific mitigation measures proposed by the biologists, feedback from the Department of Fish and Wildlife did cause Trinity County to add a mitigation measure related to nesting birds, as I just mentioned. And that includes pre-construction surveys for nesting birds. The parcels are zoned rural residential, which allows single-family dwellings, and the system that's already in place that's being upgraded provides the infrastructure for these dwellings. Likewise, the parcels are designated rural residential in the general plan, and the land use element specifically designates areas rural residential with the intent to allow development in outlying areas of the county with minimal county services. So this project provides a service that the county cannot provide and allows development in these outlying areas. So as I mentioned, the decision before the commission is simply to resolve as to the adequacy of the initial study and the mitigated negative declaration. Trinity County Code section 18.04 is what the section we're working in for this decision, and it generally provides a step-by-step approach for adoption of CEQA documents, although it speaks specifically to documents that are associated with a use permit for the project. But in this case, since there is no use permit, staff followed the section in the county code to ensure that both the state guidelines, which I already outlined, and the county code specific information was being followed. So the project is located in the Aboriginal territory of the Snungwe tribe, and so staff solicited comments from the Snungwe, and staff did receive a response from the chair of the Snungwe, Paul Ammon, and he responded that the tribe fully supported the project. Your letter is included in your meeting materials. Hawkins Bar Volunteer Fire Department supported the project. The Department of Transportation, Trinity County Department of Transportation did respond, but it was informal, and the comments that they provided can be addressed during the encroachment permit process, which is something that DOT handles. It's not within the scope of the decision before you. And the project was circulated for 30 days for public comment as required by state law. This actually happened twice. It happened on September 30th. And during that initial period, the Department of Fish and Wildlife commented on the project and requested additional information, and particularly that a mitigation measure be added. So when a mitigation measure is added, this triggers a substantial revision to the document, which then we have to circulate it again. So it was circulated twice, and the second 30-day review yielded no comments from agencies or the public. So State CEQA guidelines, section 15074D, require that when adopting a mitigated negative declaration, a lead agency shall also adopt a mitigation and monitoring reporting program. And one of these is included in, there was a memo that was posted. And there's an MMRP in the memo. And so staff recommends that the PC, the Planning Commission, approves the mitigated negative declaration as presented, including the attached mitigation measures, including the mitigation and monitoring reporting program, and then also adopts the amended resolution, which is in the memo as well, which speaks to that MMRP. But secret guidelines are specific that you have to adopt an MMRP when you adopt an MND. Okay, so provided you a description of the project, purpose and need, outlined the decision before you, gave a project evaluation, reviewed the CEQA specific processes we followed to get here, talked about project comments, and then provided you a recommendation, which is approval. So I can take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn, for your in-depth presentation. Thank you. Does the commission have any questions for Mr. Flynn?
So just to clarify, you would want us to adopt resolution PC 2025-01 that's dated February 20th, 2025? Not the one dated February 13th?
Yeah, the newer one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions for Mr. Flynn? Thank you, Mr. Flynn.
Sure.
Okay, this time I'd like to open it up to public comment, please. No public comment in the room. Any public comment on Zoom? Okay.
I'll comment.
Oh,
I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Bill Wilkinson. I'm the president of Burnt Ranch Estates Mutual Water Company, and I was one of the preparers for our grant that we got. This is a drought resilience grant program that came out a few years ago. We were rejected the first time, and the second time we did get the grant to do all this work. We are working on another grant. That grant only funded items that they thought were specifically related to drought. And for whatever reason, even though we have a old concrete filter bay that leaks, they didn't consider that to be drought related. So they didn't fund that. So we're working, we have a grant application in for the planning phase of replacing that filter bay. You will be, the environmental document does cover that as well. So if you pass this, then that project will be covered. We'll just need to get the necessary permits. So we're 2.5 years into this 3-year project. Funding ends December 31st. We've run into various problems that I won't tell you about unless you want me to. But anyway, we got this far, and now we have 6 months to get the job done, essentially, once we hit the ground. The planning commission or planning department is well aware that this project needs to move forward quickly. We have a lot line adjustment pending. Can't start construction until that's done. So that's the status of the project. And if you have any questions for me.
thank you, sir.
Okay.
Any other public comment in the room? Anybody on Zoom? Okay, I'd like to close public comment and bring it back to the commission for a discussion and a motion. Commissioners?
I'll make a motion to approve the mitigated neg deck with the monitoring plan, and also to take a vote on resolution number PC 2025-01.
Second.
So we have a motion and we have a second. Oh, okay, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Discussion?
No, I'm just clarifying that the resolution that we're voting on is the one dated February 20th, 2025. I think we got that already.
Yes. Thank you.
No discussion?
No.
Okay, I think it's a great project and we get a vote?
Commissioner Fall, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Flights, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Harper, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Chair Barrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Unanimous. Project is, the mitigated negative declaration is approved and resolution PC 2501. Thank you.
Good luck with the project and great news that you got the funding, at least for part.
To bring us into the next, in the 50 years, so should be prepared for the next 50 years. That'd be great.
Good luck. Okay, item 5E, cannabis appeal of planner director's decision P-25-01.
All right. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Nick Martinez, Assistant Planner with the Cannabis Division. First off, I'd like to welcome Commissioner Harper and say we look forward to working with you. Next couple of minutes, I'm going to spend going through the project P-25-01, the appeal. This project is an appeal of the Community Development Director's decision to deny a director's use permit application for an administrative buffer reduction, which would reduce the required 350-foot setback for this license to cultivate mature canopy to a nearby legal residential structure. So the language included in the ordinance, which is included as attachment 5 in your staff report, specifically paragraph 5 of that ordinance states, if a qualified opposition letter is received, the Community Development Director will deny the buffer reduction application. This part of the ordinance also mentions 3 exceptions to the ABR that, if applicable, would remove the requirement to meet this reduction, this setback, which would essentially nullify the opposition letter if there was one received. So during our review of the application and the received opposition letter, none of these exceptions were identified for this ABR. In the staff report, you'll see the date that we sent out the consent opposition form to the affected property owner. Using aerial imagery and Trinity County assessor data, we determined that there was only one legal residential structure within this 350-foot setback, and that's the property at 911 B-Bar-K Road. And then on December 23rd, 2024, the Cannabis Division received an opposition letter that was qualified. In the staff report, you'll find information detailing the history of this license's previous CCD compliance with the discussion taken from the original Planning Commission staff report in 2018, along with information about their compliance with CEQA and zoning code and the general plan. In the application to the appeal, which is attachment 4 of the staff report, the appellant talks about the constraints of their site configuration currently, their investment into their property, and difficulty removing permanent and fully engineered permitted infrastructure. They also mention an overall kind of frustration with this ordinance and a loss of faith in the cannabis program that could potentially occur if this happened to other licensees. So because of the language in this ordinance, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission make a motion to deny the appeal for project P-2501 and uphold the director's decision to deny the DUP application for the ABR for CCL 253. In the staff report, we've also laid out a couple alternatives for the commission to consider. But there may exist other alternatives beyond those three we wrote down. So Director Poblani is here to talk about those that weren't formally mentioned in the staff report. And I know that we have a new commissioner in the building, so if there's at any time that the commission wants an overview of how we got here from CCVs to ABRs, staff is here to answer those. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Does the commission have any questions for staff?
I'd like to hear maybe some other alternatives from Mr. Poblani.
I think it might be more appropriate to discuss those when you get into discussion. I don't know if that's a technical question, but if you guys would like, or if it'd be helpful to Commissioner Harper, to give an overview of kind of how we came from CCVs to ABRs, I'm happy to do that if it helps to inform your decision-making process.
I think we'll wait till after public comment.
Mhm.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. I'd like to open it up to public comment, please. Oh, yeah. Is the applicant or the appellant here tonight? Okay. Thank you.
Yes, my name's Thomas Mason. I was born and raised in this county. Me and my wife purchased the property down on 911 B-Bar-K in June. We moved in July, and we since received that letter in the mail. We didn't know that there was any way to even oppose. So when we got the letter, we went ahead and we wrote our response. There is more than one structure on the property. There is two structures on the property. The reason it is not legally permitted at this point in time is because the previous tenant was a grower and gutted the building, which we plan on remodeling and bringing back to a mother-in-law unit. That is less than 100 feet away from primary residence, is within the 350 feet. And I read through all the documents, and it seems like the application was approved based on the variance. And then we moved in and we're not allowing that variance to happen. So when I read through it, it was pretty cut and dry to me. It was approved because of a variance. Now there is no variance with the new owners of the property next door. So to me, it needs to be denied. And maybe there is another configuration where they can move further away. Maybe there is something along those lines that they could do, but the way that it's sitting right now, that's just what I see. I work in the timber industry. I'm RPF, and I deal with CEQA permitting quite frequently. So I know how much money goes into it. I know how much goes into it, but you also know when you are doing something like that, that your neighbors are not going to be permanent forever. There's always a chance. So that's something to think about in foresight before getting a variance or having new neighbors move in and out. Those variances are going to affect the new property owner, and their property rights should stand as a property owner. So that was my take on the situation.
Thank you very much. Does staff have any questions?
So you're saying that your current residence is, I think the estimate was 261 feet away from the greenhouse.
Where we're currently residing, yes.
Yeah, but you're thinking that you might eventually have another structure that's even closer?
No, there is.
There-
There's a mother-in-law unit that's on there, complete with bedroom, bathroom, living quarters. And
Okay,
they just gutted it, so, and
so it's not a permitted dwelling, I guess, is that the thing?
it's gutted right now. I don't know whether it's permitted or not, so I have to look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you for your time. So we've heard from the appellant. Can we hear from the applicant? Wait, look at me go.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the committee for taking the time to hear me tonight. I just want to start by giving you a little background on our side of the property.
Can you please give me your name?
Sorry, my name is Matt Wyatt. I own 921 Bubarque Road. My sister and I purchased the property in 2015 with the intent of utilizing its agricultural designation to develop a cannabis farm. My application for license was submitted to the county in the very first week that the county began its license program. However, even though we were excited to be in the license program, we did find out that there were some restrictions, setbacks from Browns Creek that runs through the property and Bubarque Road that intersects our property. Kind of made it difficult to find an area to put the grow that was within the 300, that was not within the 350 feet buffer. We did discover though that there was the ability to get a variance as long as we had consent from the neighbor who we had for many years and maintained a courteous and respectful relationship with. As part of the development of the footprint, we invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into developing it, building it out, including grading permits, building permits, electrical permits, all resulting in engineered permanent structures inspected and approved by Trinity County and assessed in our property taxes. During the development and understanding that we were going to be within the variance, we made every effort to reduce the impact on the neighboring property. This included a privacy fence beneath mature trees, to block any visual nuisance, air filters on outtake fans to reduce any odor, and low decibel fans to reduce noise, confirmed by readings taken and published in our Appendix C study. In July 2024, Mr. Mason purchased 911 Bubarque, fully aware that it was next to a grow. From July to December, we never received a single complaint from Mr. Mason. It wasn't until he received a letter and was granted the ability to dispute our ABR that we even knew there was an issue. We are a property that's kind of fallen through the cracks due to the verbiage of the ordinance. Despite 10 years of ownership and 8 years of licensing, we now find ourselves exposed and at the mercy of new neighbors of only 6 months. I believe that denying our appeal will set a dangerous precedent in Trinity County where legacy license holders and longstanding members of the community are put at risk by new neighbors who are anti-cannabis. And after reviewing the staff report and recommendation, I would like to add that if this committee should choose to deny my appeal, and I were forced to carve out the area that's within the 350 feet, I would no longer be required to maintain the mitigation efforts that I've put in place. The fence could come down, the filters could go away, the noise reducing fans could go away, and I could utilize the infrastructure to grow my 6 personal plants free of any oversight from the county and amplifying any issues had by the neighbors. I don't intend to do that, but that just kind of speaks to the futility of this and how simply putting commercial cannabis in front of something can change. I could use the exact same infrastructure, which I would do because I've spent a lot of money developing it. And I think that after being there as long as we have, contributing as much money to the cannabis department and licensing, permitting, taxes, that we deserve the consideration to, as much as he thinks, and my neighbor thinks that he deserves a right as a property owner. I have rights as a property owner. And I am established agricultural business at 921 and have been for 10 years. So I would happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for the information. Does staff have, or does commissioners have questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, I can see why you're totally frustrated. I understand that, but I had a question. So So you have odor control measures right now on the greenhouses?
Yes, ma'am, on the ones that are closest to the property within the buffer zone.
And, I'm thinking that your neighbor is saying that they are not adequate. And so maybe this is more of a question for staff, but if they're not adequate, then what is the mitigation measure? Do you step up the type of filtration or how do you resolve that?
Well, that's a great question. Interestingly enough, given that it's an agriculturally zoned parcel, an odor control plan is not actually required. So that's one of the reasons that I thought it might be helpful to kind of give a background, of the original CCV process and how we arrived at the ABRs. But ultimately, without getting into all the details of that, essentially when the first resolution, 2023-071 was a resolution that allowed for the streamlining of CCVs. That was kind of our, short-term fix that we established. That's where, sorry, thank you guys. That's where the concept of both the consent opposition letter was born, as well as additional attenuation plans to be included in the Appendix C document.
But I would think the resolution basically was superseded by what's actually written in the ordinance. So I'm not sure that that's a really relevant.
I guess the relevance is related to the fact that in terms of us reviewing and approving the Appendix C for this specific project, the applicant has gone above and beyond the requirements in terms of the fact that they are on an agriculturally zoned parcel, which they don't need to have an odor control plan. But they have an odor control plan and submitted additional attenuation plans for noise and odor and light as a result of the original streamlining resolution, and then subsequently that has been included into this ABR resolution or concept as well.
So you're saying if someone is within 350 feet, that they have no recourse for odor control because it's zoned agriculture?
I'm saying that if someone is within 350 feet, the requirement has been established that they submit additional attenuation plans that describe how they will be mitigating those potential impacts to an adjacent residence within 350 of the mature canopy.
So if he moves his greenhouses so that they are further than 350 feet from the residence, then the neighbor has no recourse to address odor?
As far as recourse, I don't know that I have a great answer to that question, but in terms of our administrative process, they would not be required to submit additional attenuation plans for those mature canopy areas because they wouldn't be within the 350. And then furthermore, because they're an agriculturally zoned parcel, the EIR actually established that they aren't required to do an odor control plan, period. So it's a great question. I don't think that the EIR or any of the existing ordinances have a clear answer to your question.
And one more question. So Mr. White has been consistently coming in and renewing his variance with the understanding that it is up for grabs every year, depending on what the neighbor says, right?
I can't speak to Mr. Wyatt's understanding.
Okay, got it. But I mean, that is what the placed by the ABR, which was that, I mean, what we've always said, which is that, at any time, if a neighbor came in and objected, that potentially they would lose that variance.
That is also my understanding from the historical practices, yes.
Okay, all right. So this is a hard one. Okay, I don't have any other questions.
Well, I would also like to just take a moment to speak to the mother-in-law that they're intending. I used to be really good friends with the person who owned the property before. I spent a lot of time over there in the house, in the garage, which is what it is. It's a garage with a bathroom, and they didn't gut it. It was the way it is now since Jeb, who was an elderly gentleman who lived there in 2015 when we bought the property, owned it and he retired out to Trinity Lake. It's been used as a horse stable. It's stored hay. It's a garage.
Right.
And I mean, I don't doubt that they want to turn it into that, but it's not reverting it back to something that it had been taken away. So,
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir.
thank you.
At this time, I'd like to open it up to public comment. Do you have any public comment in the room?
Hello, chairs, or commissioners, your commissioners here. I'd like to just speak from a unique perspective, being that I have worked for the cannabis division, and I highly respect
Can you please say your name?
Vidette Vanderweide, yes, Lewiston.
Thank you.
I highly respect the staff that we have. And I think one of the biggest frustrations I had being on staff was to have everybody who didn't know what they were talking about make suggestions about how our farmers do their businesses. Just because we have regulations doesn't mean that these regulations are wholly put together. And what I mean by that is we have our logical side of our regulations, and we have an intellectual side that we have to think about. We have a farmer here who's been in business for 10 years. We have neighbors who moved in less than a year ago. That's your due diligence. When you buy something, you do your due diligence. There's a cannabis farm right next door, and you want to come and shut that thing down, their business, you're going to put them out of business because you don't like the smell. I'm so tired of sitting over there and hearing all of this and not being able to say anything about it. But I'm saying something now because I have had a business. I've had much experience in corporate America. I know how businesses run. You can't keep jerking people around, giving them a license and taking it away because somebody has a bias. This is a business, and we're trying to keep our farmers in business. So why don't we do some good work here and not only take what we have in the regulations, because I will tell you from my experience working behind the process of CCVs to ABRs, it was clunky as anything. It's not seamless. This is unique. You said it. It's unique. I've worked with Matt over the counter. He's respectable. He's nice, which doesn't matter, I know in this case, but he has a good-hearted person. He is a good-hearted person, and he's a farmer. Just let him stay in business. Figure that out a different way. The staff has recommendations. Listen to the staff. They know what they're talking about. They have the education, and stop trying to rearrange things for these businesses, for the staff, and tell the staff, you're not educated in this. Let them figure it out and keep him in business. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Any other public comment in the room?
Good evening, Commissioners. John Brower from Junction City. I'd like to welcome the new Commissioner Harmon from South County. I was a planning commissioner from District 4 when we made the grand compromises of the original urgency ordinance for the cannabis program that included the ability to seek a variance from the 350-foot setback. And then when it went to the supervisors at the very last minute, right before the vote to approve it countywide, a curveball was thrown that made those variances annual. Very unique in California land use and planning to Trinity County and cannabis. If this was any other land use on ag zone that was appropriate for ag zoning, there would be zero debate about greenhouses or farm-related odors or anything like that on agricultural zoning. And so now that the county has transitioned away from the annual cannabis variance to this new administrative buffer reduction process, as far as I know, this is the first test of it. And the intent of the transitioning away from the annual cannabis variances, completely unique unicorn in California land use, to this new method of reducing setbacks was to get away from the annual risk of losing a business for the poorest county in the state. The cannabis can be done responsibly. The rest of the program, the rest of the ordinance, including the CEQA, the extensive CEQA portion, is really robust and it has many, many protections in it. If a project has been running since the very beginning of the program and hasn't generated a single complaint, not a single notice of noncompliance from DCC or the county or Fish and Wildlife or Department of Food and Agriculture or the Water Board or any of the 13 state agencies that all regulate commercial cannabis cultivation, and there haven't been any neighbor complaints, then I think your job is really easy here tonight. Simple. Don't approve the appeal, allow the business to continue. I'm hopeful that the neighbors can resolve their differences and become great neighbors.
Mr. Brower,
Thank you for your time.
thank you for your comment. Any other public comment in the room? Any public comment on Zoom?
Adrian Keys.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners, and I'd like to welcome the new commissioner also. I couldn't get to the comment button quickly enough at the opening comment, so I apologize. Welcome aboard. We appreciate your service. The way that I'm seeing this reflects a lot of what the comments have been so far. This is a long existing business. We're going through this one final transition period to this administrative buffer reduction from a variance. We have received a qualified letter of opposition, and there are no existing exemptions in the ordinance to have avoided not that. What it isn't doing is saying that you cannot uphold the appeal from the licensee and approve his ABR. You have the discretionary authority to do that. There's nowhere in code that restricts that action. I believe it's noted in the staff report as a suggestion. When you look at what the complaints are, there's apparently noise and odor, both of which are CEQA related and both of which are addressed in the EIR and the licensee's Appendix C. So I don't see how, I just don't see how those come into play here. Of course, the new neighbor has the ability to be here tonight and to contest the issuance of this administrative buffer reduction. But in my opinion, that would need to have some sort of I don't know, some sort of further standing to really uphold his objection here. I believe standard when a director's use permit or a conditional use permit is appealed, that you have the CEQA document part, and in this case, that's already approved. The other grounds may be is if there was insufficient environmental analysis, or if there was errors in the document, or if the director made a poor decision and did something that didn't align with the ordinances. None of those are the case at this point. I would hope that coming out of here, you can use your discretionary authority to, and correct me if I've got this wrong, because these appeals and denials can be somewhat confusing, but it would be to uphold the appeal of the denial of the license and issue the administrative buffer reduction to the licensee. At the very least, I would like to see that and a recommendation to the supervisors to address what's happening here so that it doesn't happen in the future. And similar to the language in the exemptions about there being an exemption for someone who then builds.
Thank you, Adrian. That's time.
Oh,
Thank you for your comments. Any other comment on Zoom?
Lisa, go ahead.
Good evening, Commissioners. Lisa Wright, Lewiston. Welcome to our newest member. I'm usually there in person, but couldn't make it this evening, so I look forward to meeting you. I am the primary owner of Flora, which is a consulting company here in Weaverville that currently handles about 200 cannabis farming clients from a license and regulatory compliance perspective. So some comments I'd like to share with you. Number one, I think that there's some faults in the ordinance as it was developed. I know we're transitioning from CCV to ABR, but there's some things now that in hindsight, we probably could have done better and could be corrected. So the first one is the ordinance required the director to deny an ABR if there was a qualified opposition letter, required the director to deny. So that's in conflict with a director's use permit in which the director has discretion. So we've removed the discretion by the language of that ordinance. So there's some conflict probably between even using a director's use permit process if you're automatically going to require the director to deny. I don't think the director wanted to deny this. I think the director was forced to deny this because of the language in the ordinance. So that would be something that could be recommended for updating for consistency. DUP, the director should be allowed to have the discretion to have denied the appeal. Second, I would like you to consider those exceptions. One of the exceptions is if you could put the time up, that would be very helpful because you've been cutting people off right before when they're talking. Usually you get a warning.
You're at 1 and 11.
Okay. The other issue is there's an exception if a adjacent property owner builds closer than the 350 feet and creates the requirement themselves. Then it's an exception, and an ABR isn't needed because you chose to build that close. I think that in the spirit of that, there should also be the exception that if someone has moved to the nuisance, which a lawyer friend of mine told me is that's actually like a legal kind of thing. If you move to the nuisance, you were aware there was a nuisance there when you moved, and you still chose to move there. It's very clear when you go past that parcel and you go by there that there's a farm operation right next to you. So it goes back to earlier comments, about due diligence and not moving to a nuisance, had no complaints during the full operational season, and then when you had the opportunity to try to create problems for an existing agricultural operation, chose to do so. So I think there's some, errors made. I would ask that you overrule the director's decision to approve the appeal, which denied the ABR, and let the ABR proceed through. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments on Zoom? I'd like to close public comment and bring it back to the commission for a motion and discussion. Commissioners?
We're a little confused here. The appeal is filed by. Sorry. The appeal is filed by Wyatt. Okay. And the department is recommending denying that appeal. Is how I read this?
Correct.
With variation, I mean, you want to talk about variations, right? As far as an alternate to just denying it?
Yeah, if there's a question there, I'm happy to answer it.
I'm just confused as to what the denial would be as far as he's appealing.
So he's appealing the community development director's decision to deny the administrative buffer reduction
Right.
director use permit application.
And so he's appealing to overturn that.
Yes, his appeal is basically a request for you all to take into consideration something other than the ABR being automatically denied.
Gotcha.
I do want to agree with Commissioner Harper. The wording of it is awful. You don't know what so thank you. But anyway.
Yeah, I can't figure out if it's a yay or a nay.
And I'll acknowledge that it is really confusing when we have an appeal to a director's decision. We have a CCL applicant who is also the ABR DUP applicant. But then we refer to the applicant of the appeal who has submitted the appeal form to oppose the director's decision.
You're not helping. Commissioner Fleets, I believe you had a comment.
I'll hold for a second. Thank you.
Motion on the floor before we do discussion.
Correct.
So do we have a motion?
Yeah. Motion?
You want to make one?
Okay, I'll make a motion to uphold the director's decision to deny the DUP application, as well as request that staff and or the Board of Supervisors look into addressing existing licensed cannabis holders with new with during the transition of lands or properties for new owners.
So I'll second that. You're upholding the director's decision.
Correct.
I second that.
Discussion?
Well, I'm still in the problem-solving mode here, and so still trying to figure this out. So 43050 says that small licenses shall not be allowed within 350 feet of a residential structure on any adjoining parcels. It doesn't say anything about agricultural zones property. How does that come about?
So that's something that is in the EIR specifically as it relates to odor mitigation.
Okay, but that then is contradictory to what the ordinance actually says. Because the ordinance is pretty clear.
Yeah, I guess I generally agree with you. However, the whole variance process and the EIR reflected the ability for that 350-foot residential setback requirement to not be met originally through the variance process, now through the ABR process.
Okay. Still doesn't help me resolve Mr. Mason's concerns. Okay. My discussion is mostly this is really, really hard because I don't know how many years I've sat up here and said to people applying for the variance, you know that somebody could move in next to you and object to the variance. And so do you understand that that's a risk? And everybody nods their head, but I don't think that they took us seriously. And so it's just really hard. It is zoned agriculture. He has invested all this. I wonder if there isn't a way to move the structures further away. And so, yeah, I'm just struggling. But I do think it's important to uphold the director's decision and follow what's written in the rules until we fix it.
I agree. I also am not pleased to see investments be made on properties that then can be changed this quickly. And with the current layout of the property, there would need to be natural resource development in order to continue to operate on the property on the other side, if that's even eligible due to slope. So I am not happy with everything we have in front of us, but to uphold the current policies that we have in place, I am where I am.
Harper?
Everything.
All right. I'm gonna wade right into the middle of it. We have a legacy farmer who's been there 10 years, 8 years licensed, 0 complaints. I'm personally familiar with this property. It's beautiful, it's maintained, there's architectural designs incorporated into the property. It's not just a a run-of-the-mill industrial complex. It's a beautiful home. I don't understand how you can buy a house next to a farm and then come in and say you want to take away that farmer's ability to provide food for his family. Simple facts are, if this was a pig farm or a vineyard, we would not be here. This is reefer madness is what this is. We've got a landowner, a business owner who has gone above and beyond, has completed an Appendix C, an EIR, grading permits, building permits, engineers, has been taxed based on his property, his business's footprint for the last 10 years with 0 complaints. We're talking about 94 feet, I think is what I looked at, between the buffer from 350. I just can't imagine moving into someone's house, your next door neighbor, and taking away their ability to put food on the table for their family because you bought a house next to an established business. I just cannot wrap my head around that. I can't imagine being a business owner and waking up every day and living in fear that your business is going to be revoked if your neighbor sells their house and moves on. That's an awful way to live. So if there's no more discussion, I guess we have a vote.
If I may, before you get to the vote, I just want to clarify Commissioner Fleitz's motion, because when you seconded Commissioner Fall, you didn't include the second half of her motion. So I just wanted to clarify if you wanted that included, if you were seconding that component of it.
I do. I think that's a good idea to resolve this issue in the future, for sure.
And so I didn't get a chance to write it down verbatim. Could you potentially restate the second half of your motion?
So I'd like to ask that staff or the Board of Supervisors invest time to evaluate how to address land ownership changes with existing compliant cannabis farms on adjacent properties. Do we need to add that have CCVs or the ABRs specifically, or just adjacent farms?
I guess I'd like to ask for a point of clarification in terms of, the language you're using.
Yeah.
I think you said that staff and the Board of Supervisors invest time.
Or
Staff
or Board of Supervisors. So that the Board of Supervisors provide direction to staff to investigate and come with a proposal to the Planning Commission and then to the Board of Supervisors for potential remediations to this issue.
So alternatively, you could direct staff in your motion to bring an ordinance update to the Planning Commission. Alternatively, if your motion is to direct staff to engage with the Board of Supervisors, we'd have to agendize a discussion with the Board of Supervisors to get them to direct staff to bring ordinance updates to you all. So I just want to point those things out.
I wonder, would this be a good opportunity for you to discuss your alternate solutions?
So as you can see, we presented 3 alternatives. The first one essentially being that you would uphold the appeal overturning the director's decision. Sorry for the complication of appeal, appellant, director's decision, and all of those terms sort of being used across, both sides of the equation.
I'll allow it.
The second is just essentially that you could continue this item. And the third is that the applicant could reconfigure. Outside of those alternatives, I would say that, if you wanted to give staff a more clear directive in terms of your thoughts or guidance on exactly how to update the ordinance and what you would like to see updated specifically in terms of this scenario or otherwise, that's kind of a part of what I entertain as alternatives. So if the commission chooses to more clearly direct staff to pursue ordinance updates, then related to that, there are sort of two potential options. One is that you direct staff to update the ordinance, bring it back to you, and continue this item to a future date following ordinance updates potentially. Or alternatively, you could, as pretty much your motion covers, Commissioner Flights, you could, motion to uphold the appeal, but direct staff to work on ordinance revisions to prevent this scenario from occurring again, if that's your wish.
So I'm back to my problem-solving mode. So the concerns are the fans and the smell. And so are there technical solutions that, upgrading the odor control or something like that and the fans noise that would, allow this to be move forward?
Well, so as it relates to the Appendix C and the additional attenuation plans that were submitted as a result of the original streamlining ordinance and then carried over into this ABR process, the noise is already mitigated below the threshold that it needs to be in terms of the standard is 55 decibels at the property line. So that has been accomplished. Again, to some of the comments that we received, that we heard this evening, I am not aware of any complaints related to noise or cannabis odor from the new owners. Had we received complaints, related to noise or odor, we would have gone out to do a verification respectively of the noise or the odor. But the attenuation plan process has already given us the data that we need to evaluate and ascertain whether or not the noise threshold is exceeded. So as far as noise, that has been resolved and is compliant, regardless of whether they're 250 feet or 500 feet. It comes down to the decibel threshold at the property line. So that has been resolved. As it relates to odor, we just recently received the nasal ranger, and we are looking forward to utilizing that piece of technology to quantify odor concerns for this upcoming cultivation season. And so that is a bit of a sticky spot because the EIR clearly calls out that agriculturally zoned properties do not even need to have an odor control plan.
But the ordinance says that,
Right, so that's why it's sticky, because the EIR is somewhat in conflict with the exact language in the ordinance. But as it relates, let's just assume that it's not agriculturally zoned and there isn't that exception. The attenuation plans and the odor control plan are functionally what would facilitate mitigating those potential impacts. So in terms of the way odor is laid out program-wide, ag zoning aside, if we were to receive odor complaints going forward into this cultivation season, we would go out there with the nasal ranger and determine whether or not that odor threshold exceeds the threshold as established in the EIR. If it were to surpass the thresholds established in the EIR, then yes, because they have submitted an odor control plan voluntarily in this scenario, we would direct them to move to that next tier in their odor control plan. So I guess, as a subset to the alternatives, you could certainly condition the approval in some regard, potentially to say that, you know, if odor complaints are received, they will be verified and, you know, perhaps the applicant consents to establish further odor controls to further minimize those odor impacts.
So one more question. So in terms of looking at alternatives then, kind of to maybe paraphrase what Commissioner Flights is trying to do, could we direct staff to propose an amendment to the administrative buffer reduction that would allow the director flexibility in not require, in issuing or denying an ABR based on changes in land, in ownership?
Certainly. I think it could also be addressed under the existing exceptions.
And how long would that take? And if we continued this to an unknown date, could it be done in a way that would, you know, resolve this in a timely manner?
In order to get it at the next regularly scheduled planning commission meeting, we would need to notice it in tomorrow, like we would need to send the legal notice to Trinity Journal tomorrow. But I do think it's quite achievable for us to bring it back for a special meeting, the second meeting of March. And then, you know, we're talking, I can't think off the top of my head exactly how that would align with then noticing and scheduling, you know, that ordinance update to the board. But I think that reasonably, we would be able to get it to the board, you know, by the second meeting in April.
In that case, maybe I will make a substitute motion that we continue this item until a date uncertain and direct staff to suggest amendments to the ABR process that would allow the director flexibility in issuing or denying an ABR, depending on land ownership changes.
So, right, I mean, that is one alternative that you give the director the flexibility. The other alternative sort of hinges on expanding upon existing exception 3 or C, actually 6.
Yeah, I looked at that. I didn't, those are automatic. So I'm proposing to add another category of flexibility versus automatic denial.
And, you know, of course, it's your decision to make in terms of what you vote for this evening. I just want to point out that that does potentially create the scenario where we go through, we update the ordinance, the director decision that is not the same given those language updates. And then we find ourselves again in an appeal of the director's decision from the other party.
Well, I don't have a second for my substitute motion yet, so.
Not yet. We're discussing.
Well, we can't discuss it till we get a second.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so,
We have a subsequent motion.
so, yes, this motion would be to continue this to a date uncertain, to direct the staff to propose amendments to the ABR process. I'm still here, that would allow the director flexibility in issuing or denying ABRs based on changes in land ownership of the adjacent residential structure.
Basically eliminating the automatic portion of it. I agree.
We have a subsequent motion.
I agree that we are going to come back to revisit the issue again from the other side. And so I'm trying to wrap my head around how can we work a change in the ordinance so that it's fair, but also does not open additional animosity between neighbors in the future.
What about what about like a small board or an ad hoc? Versus. director?
Commissioner Harper, I'm having a hard time hearing
Oh,
you.
sorry.
You need to get into that microphone.
How about like an ad hoc committee instead of the director to make those decisions? That seems pretty involved, but just throwing stuff out there.
I think that's a creative concept.
I mean, 'cause you
I'm
believe-
not exactly sure how that would work with our existing code, but Bella, please enlighten us.
I would just add that an ad hoc has to have a specific purpose that will have a conclusion. So it can't be a long-term sustainable solution. If you want the board to form some type of subcommittee, that could maybe be the way.
Certainly an ad hoc committee could be established to work through these ordinance revisions as it relates to this topic, but not as an ongoing body that would weigh in on, you know, instead of the director's decision.
You could add, flexibility is a term, but usually discretion is used in our code, the term discretion. And the planning director would use their knowledge and the case, in front of them to use discretion and justify discretion.
Just always worry about putting power in one person's hand as far as I mean, they change over time and they're gonna have, so.
And I don't want to step on your guys' toes, but there are two ways that an ordinance amendment can occur, which is through resolution. Either you can have it as a recommendation from the planning commission, which you are, or from the board of supervisors. But the key part I'm trying to say here is through a resolution that needs to be outlined. So one suggestion coming from me, the senior planner, would be to continue this to a date certain, so you don't have to continue noticing it or renotice it, and bring a resolution to the planning commission for them to direct you to start ordinance amendments. Because then it's written out in the ordinance,
That's what I meant.
in the resolution. Did that make sense?
And if I may, through the chair to Commissioner Flights, your question, it's essentially like, how could we modify this to not create the situation where it's going to be appealed again? Really, the only way to do that would be to augment or add, augment the existing exceptions or add a new exception to capture this scenario.
Right? I'm not so keen on trying to formulate additional criteria per se, because I don't think that's the route we want to go either. But I agree this needs to be continued. I agree it needs to be addressed. I do not have the solution at the moment, but look forward to potential options and seeing what is presented in the future.
I mean, the way it's written now, it's an automatic denial. If it says, so someone applies for an administrative buffer reduction, so they want less than the 350 feet. And it's an automatic denial. Well, I mean, it's an automatic denial of the ABR. If someone submits a qualified letter that says, I have a structure that's 350 feet, a legal residential structure that's less than 350 feet. Wait, I'm saying this backwards. You can't get an ABR if you have a residential structure that's less than 350 feet and you just built it. It's a new residential structure.
Right.
That's the exception.
Yep.
Right, the ABR is not, the residential setback requirement is removed as a result of that exception.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time on these, okay, so your neighbor's another grower, he can't complain, maybe trying to drive you out of business. If it's under the same ownership, you can get your ABR, but if it's a new residential structure, no, you can't build a new residential structure and then complain about your neighbor being a farmer. That's kind of where we were headed.
Yep.
So I don't see how you could just simply add that it's a new owner. Because then, yeah, we're back right where we are today.
Well, I think to clarify some of it is that there could be an exception added that would say if a neighboring parcel has a permitted structure for occupancy within 350 feet of an existing grow, that the new purchasers were aware that they purchased a property next to a grow and that's them implying consent that they agree to live there because they purchased the property next to the existing licensed cannabis grow. Is an option of language that could be included.
Okay.
I would be 100% behind that one. You buy the house, you know what's there, you don't get to come back and.
And I just want to point out that I don't think that it's very likely, although it is possible that we might see this scenario again. I don't think it's very likely because the majority of the pre-existing CCV, approved CCV site configurations that are still continuing in the program have already converted to the ABR. And this is a result of basically just that timeline. Had Mr. Wyatt submitted his ABR application in May of last year, like directly after, the ordinance was established, it would have gone through with no opposition and it would be once and done as we intended when we established these ordinance updates.
But what I'm worried about is, so this would resolve the problem ongoing, but for now, we're dealing with an adjacent residential home that thinks that they, have this legal recourse because that's the way it's currently written. So I'm still back to my problem solving, which is how do we address the, the issues? So can we do both? Can we work with the, continue this to a time? I'm not sure, certain or uncertain. Work on amending the ordinance to address this issue and also work with the applicant and the appellant to resolve the homeowner's concerns. I mean, am I wishful thinking here?
I don't know in what capacity we'd be able to mediate that, but.
No, I want to say something here. So originally, when we were trying to figure this thing out on how would we get rid of the variances, which were being used incorrectly as far as planning goes, and how would we transition that to the administrative buffer reduction? So when we were originally trying to work this thing out and try to make it to where it's a one and done thing, what we ended up doing was getting to a point where we were trying to get away from doing the variance thing every year, trying to get to the administrative buffer reduction. So basically the negotiating point was to say that if anybody sent in an opposition letter, it would automatically be heard by the planning commission. It does not mean that it's automatically disapproved, that it can't be heard and that it's just automatic. All it meant was that it would be brought to the planning commission for the commission to discuss. And then based on the merits of the applicant and the appellant, to make a determination, should it go forward or not.
I thought it doesn't come to the commission if they submit a qualified letter, isn't it? You just automatically deny unless you get a situation where there's an appeal of your denial.
So in the original, when we were deciding this, it was if it is denied.
Oh,
So automatically it should be determined at the planning commission level. And if the applicant wanted to make an appeal of that, then they could. But you know, who wouldn't basically? So, but the reason it's here before you is just for the determination to be made by the commission. So nothing is automatic here. So the commission gets together and decides, and like, for instance, and it's been mentioned, if you wanted to just have a motion to condition this and say, well, the issues seem to be noise and it seems to be odor. Okay, so let's go ahead and we will condition this saying if there is a further complaint that says there is more noise that's not quantifiable above the given threshold, or if there is odor above a given threshold, then, okay, we can see that it's substantiated. So then we would increase the mitigation measures for, you know, the noise, you know, lighter fans, or, you know, charcoal filters or whatever we need to do on the odor. So that was one of the issues with it being an agriculture, you know, zone parcel, is that, well, that doesn't exist. Well, it does exist in this format because that was what was mentioned as being the issue. So the merits, and then just basically decide we can continue to a later date. You can give us direction to go figure it out and come back with 3 options. Basically, it's at your desire, whichever way you want to approach it. I just didn't want it to continue on as it being something automatic. No, it's here and the commission gets to decide. So whether it's agree or not agree, that's fine, but.
Thank you for that additional information. I don't know if you guys meant to, but I take it as insult to injury when you said that if he had just applied for the ABR back in May, he wouldn't have been here. So did I hear that right?
Yep.
To me, that's just rubbing salt in the wound. So if he had known to apply for this ABR, maybe he was busy running his business as business owners are, and he had applied to do this ABR, he wouldn't be here.
Agreed.
Wow. So we have a motion, a subsequent motion. Would anybody like to amend or change given the information provided by Mr. Plebani or Mr. Presley?
I mean, I'm still thinking we need to continue it and work on it. The question, I guess, is what would be the direction to staff? Oh, I was trying to get rid of that noise. Thank you. I still think we need to work on it to resolve this issue for future. And I'm still hoping we can figure out how to address the person who submitted the opposition letters concerns. So I guess, I guess I can change my motion a little bit, maybe to a time certain or something like that, or less specific direction to the director on how the ordinance should look, but I'm still headed in that direction. So I don't know.
It sounds to me like we have a one-off that slipped through the cracks. I mean, maybe the applicant's agreeable with installing additional filters or whatever noise mitigation. I agree there is an opportunity here, but on a one-off like this, I'm having a tough time with this, but anybody else have any questions?
So we could, I mean, as far as a motion to have the director and staff come up with 3 new options, the next meeting would be that's something I have with the motion. Is that how that works?
I mean, my motion was to direct staff to, yes, come back with suggested language for the ordinance that would essentially resolve this ongoing in the future.
I like the idea of alternatives. Sound good?
I'm sorry, what was that? I don't know that I can.
I don't know if he used his 10 minutes, but he may have some time remaining if you want to give him that leeway.
If you have 4 minutes left, then you got 4 minutes.
I understand what is last here. I get it. I know that by the verbiage, what's going on, that I would like to stand on, but by hearing you guys discussing punting when it's been brought to you to decide to punt it down the road, I don't think you appreciate the stress that is on me. Rory touched on it a little bit. I have been trying to make this business succeed for 10 years. We had an 18-month shutdown while we were waiting on our CEQA approval that we couldn't cultivate. Then the price collapsed. It has been a tough go for farmers the last 3 or 4 years. And finally, every time I see the end zone in sight, the goalpost moves again. There is another hurdle, and it's getting to the point where when is enough going to be enough? I've played by the rules. I've bought every permit. I've done everything that you have asked of me time and time again. And yet here I am begging for my right to exist and earn a living on my property that is zoned agriculture, that is overseen by the California Department of Food and Agriculture. At some point, it has to be enough. And to hear you guys talk about punting it and me having to sit with this for another month, please just make a decision. Even if it's the bullet to the head, please make a decision so that I can figure out what my recourse is going to be and what my next step will be. But I do have rights. As a tax-paying citizen of this community, I have rights. And none of you have ever had someone come and tell you you don't have the right to do what you do to make a living and provide for your family. And I have to live with that every day and fight that burden every day. And so I just ask, please just make a decision. Don't punt. That's the worst thing. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you for your comment.
Briefly, Chair,
John,
you have the ability to reopen public comment if the chair chooses. It's a very small room tonight. It might not take long.
John's going to say the same thing.
To save us some time, Mr. Brower, would you more or less mirror what applicant has said? Just to save us some time.
Absolutely. I would treat this, I think, as the ordinance update to the new administrative buffer reduction happened. One of the missteps or misrecordings or something was to treat this any different than any other director's use permit in Trinity County.
Wrong.
And the creation of these cannabis exemptions to things like conditional use permits, director's use permits, ministerial permits in Trinity County is what has ruined the economy of this county. It's very simple. A director's use permit should be a director's use permit, should be a director's use permit. Trinity County, a director's use permit allows the director to make a discretionary decision. There's two different types of permitting in California land use. There's ministerial and discretionary. Ministerial means if you meet the requirements of the permit and you pay your fee, you get your permit. Discretionary means that it can be conditioned and that there's a discretionary approval process. Trinity County, two types of discretionary permitting. Conditional use permits automatically go to a public hearing before the Planning Commission with a public notice in the newspaper and a public comment period and an appeal process if the outcome is to be appealed. A director's use permit allows the decision to go to the Director of Planning, and the Director of Planning can approve or deny. But the Director of Planning can also kick a director's use permit matter to the Planning Commission for a public hearing, just like a conditional use permit, if they decide it's controversial in nature. Make this administrative buffer reduction just like it was intended to get out of the weeds and let people get to work and also protect people's residential rights, property rights of both neighbors and businesses.
Thank you, Mr. Brower.
If we were going to continue this to a date certain so that you didn't have to keep republishing it, what would the date certain be?
If we're continuing this item simply to bring forward a resolution to clearly establish that you're directing staff to make the ordinance updates, then we can get it to the next meeting.
Which would be what date?
March. No.
So 3 weeks?
But that would not be a final resolution, or the resolution being a confusing term there, that wouldn't ultimately create ordinance revisions. That would just then move it forward. I think that it's given that I have a clear understanding, I think, of, the desire to resolve this, we could still stay on track for a resolution at the next meeting and then a special meeting with ordinance updates in the second half of March.
And how would we address, though, the opposition letter?
In what regard?
Well, there's two issues here. One is the ongoing issue of what happens when someone moves into a known grow. And that's what we're fixing potentially with the resolution. But, to address Mr. Mason's concern, how do we address his concern that, right now he has this ability to oppose, based on the current ordinance?
So, kind of.
Are you going to propose, are we proposing to take away his ability to do that? Is it going to be retroactive, what is the resolution? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
So, circling back around kind of the alternatives that we've broadly discussed, to Director Presley's comments. One alternative is to just simply modify the section of code where it indicates that it would basically be an automatic denial. And I think what he was suggesting was that as an alternative to that, it would say, if a qualified opposition letter is received, planning commission hearing will be scheduled to review the merits of, something to that effect.
So how do we make that happen?
Sorry, go
Go
ahead.
ahead, sorry.
I mean, that's just a simple ordinance update.
But legally, he's already submitted the opposition letter and we have an appeal here. So unless you make the ordinance retroactive, you haven't resolved that first issue.
So in my opinion, if we were to modify the language to remove the automatic denial, the qualified opposition letter would stand. However, the appeal of the director's decision to deny would become moot because we've changed the code section to basically enable the director to schedule a planning commission hearing to discuss the opposition and make a decision as to whether the ABR would be granted or not.
So would that mean to address Mr. Wyatt's question, so are you asking, that essentially is what you're doing tonight. We're saying, let's fix this in the future and let's have the planning commission uphold or deny the director's decision, and you're going to end up the same place. Like right now, tonight, are we going to decide, whether we're going to uphold your decision or not?
So, I think that the biggest change there is that in terms of staff's recommendation, we didn't feel that it was appropriate for staff to recommend that you deny or that you uphold the appeal denying or overturning the director's decision to deny the ABR. Sorry, it's so complicated. We would be basically scheduling the hearing for you to review pretty much exactly what you're looking at tonight. However, we would be removing the code section that made it an automatic denial, which then would enable the commission to come up with findings more readily to justify a decision in either regard.
What? I'm not a huge fan of that option because it does continue and continue. It are, I don't know if I can ask this, but are the parties open to mitigation measures? Can we direct you to work with the two parties and see if they are willing to look at mitigation measures to come to a resolution?
I mean, I'm sure you can direct us to do that. In terms of how we would facilitate such a negotiation, I'm not entirely certain.
Okay, that's fair.
So with the option you said to direct staff to change the ordinance for the ABR, how do we as a commission make that happen? Is it a item we vote on? Is it a?
So that was, I don't know if you guys were tracking on Bella's comment, but that's what she was trying to clarify for you all, that based on county code, really the direction to staff to update an ordinance should be done via resolution.
Okay.
So we would bring back, as I proposed, we would bring back to the next meeting a resolution that just clearly establishes the direction that you wish staff to take and pursue the ordinance updates. And then subsequently, we would bring back ordinance updates.
So this item would go in limbo until that meeting where we have the update?
If you wish to basically continue the item until these ordinance updates are achieved to a date certain or to a date uncertain, yeah, I guess you could say it would be in limbo or it would be on hold until that was all done. Alternatively, to the CCL applicant's request for you to just simply take action one way or another, you could certainly deny his appeal, upholding the director's decision, and still direct staff to bring a resolution to you at the next meeting to clarify your request for us to do ordinance updates, then subsequently bring the ordinance updates, and that would at least enable the CCL applicant to consider the overall timelines and whether they wish to pursue reconfiguration as an alternative to, to enable them to proceed perhaps more quickly than going through the ordinance revisions and reapplying for the ABR, or, how we'll kind of work through all of those pieces.
So to piggyback on what Commissioner Flights has said, is there an opportunity if we continue this to date certain, so 3 weeks, right? Maybe the neighbors can get together and get a plan before then.
And we have seen it happen in the past where a formal opposition letter was rescinded by the individual who submitted it.
I'm certainly agreeable. My commitment as the chair is to cancel no meetings this year and to agendize any items that need to be addressed. That's my commitment this year. So I'm certainly agreeable with putting it on the next available meeting.
Okay, so is the correct parliamentary procedure for me to make another substitute motion? Bella will keep me straight. To direct staff to draft a resolution for the March 13th regular board meeting to propose a solution to this issue for future changes in land ownership.
If it were to be continued to a date certain, then we would be hearing this appeal of the director's decision again, because that is the item which is before you tonight.
Well, I'm
So
trying to figure out if it's like two separate motions. So is there one motion to direct staff to draft a resolution to a date certain next month, and a second motion to continue P 2501 to a date uncertain?
I think, I mean, I imagine from my perspective, yeah, you could do it as sort of two separate motions, but they can certainly be tied together where you're continuing the item to a date uncertain, this specific appeal hearing item, and then directing staff to bring you a resolution at the next regular meeting.
Okay, so that is going to be, I am going to make a substitute motion to my substitute motion. I move that the Planning Commission direct staff to draft a resolution that amends the administrative buffer reduction ordinance and bring that back at the next regular meeting on March 13th. And that we also continue P 2501 to a date uncertain. Apologize, Mr. Wyatt.
Is it just a question. Why does that one have to be uncertain?
Well, because we'd have to have the special meeting scheduled and the resolution adopted and all that before we'd want to.
You'd have to adopt the resolution, then we'd have to, at the next special meeting, so second meeting in March, bring back the ordinance revisions, then we'd have to take those ordinance revisions to the board and have to be approved by the board, and then we would be able to bring this item back to you all at that point. So we could do our best to, on the fly, calculate, but I think the only difference for us is one additional notice or, additional noticing. So I think that given that we're not exactly sure on the overall timeline, that it probably makes more sense to continue the item to a date uncertain, and we will certainly, do our best to get it to you in a timely fashion. So that'd be my recommendation, rather than continuing it to a date certain and then not meeting that timeline, and then it gets continued further.
So, sorry, you had a subsequent motion.
Well, I think I made that, so I have my second substitute motion. And in the interim, if Mr. Mason and Mr. Wyatt come up with some kind of mitigation measures or something like that, that could just be on the regular agenda, right? Or do we have to change it?
Or would they just resolve it?
Submit, withdraw the opposition letter, maybe?
Potentially, it's an option. It would have to be agreed that the resolution would be, well, for us to use the new resolution on this current issue, that any changes are made retroactive. And right now, both parties are playing by the rules. They're playing within their field. They're doing what they were asked to do. And now we're changing the rules on them.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Come again?
On that happening.
What are you referring to specifically?
Adopting an ordinance that would retroactively make an appeal from the past mute.
Yeah, I don't,
Just never seen that.
no, I wouldn't want to do that either.
I just would want council to weigh in on that type of action.
And if you wish to direct staff to clarify that as it relates to bringing you all a resolution to then clarify the direction to staff, I'm happy to do so.
Was this submitted to council prior to coming today?
Yes, we've had an extensive discussion about this.
Okay.
So since you made a subsequent motion, do you need a second on that?
Yes, I do.
Do we have a second on Commissioner Fall's subsequent?
No, okay, well then we're back to my first substitute motion, which was,
Motions can we make?
you can make another substitute motion if you want. Yeah,
May I request a 5-minute break?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
should have brought that one up before this one. Just sitting there. Is county council online? No. Let's see.
then a study could result in moving to next tiers to find potential solutions, while still trying to operate within our playing fields.
Sorry, I just got a text that it's muted online. Okay, thank you.
I think I follow what you're inquiring about, and the potential impacts have already been studied, have already been analyzed, and are included in the approved Appendix C as part of the attenuation plans.
Okay, so let me correct. I believe then the word study is the incorrect term. It would be to more to a no, it would be to address Mr. Mason's concerns, but I don't know what the proper term is for uh, essentially documenting the outcome of the complaints. So, and if it's even possible at this point in time. Okay, I'll hold on my idea for a moment and
So I
let
mean,
it.
I think I understand, what you're trying to get to. I think the dilemma is that, as I stated, the noise threshold, that has been studied, I guess we can use that word, or evaluated. And it's been determined that they're below the threshold that they need to be at, regardless of whether they're within 350 or not.
Okay.
That decibel threshold is established based on decibels at the property line. And then Bella pointed out to me that in 1743G, which is the performance standards section, it does state that odor mitigations are not required on ag zoned parcels.
Hmm.
So again, the applicant has gone above and beyond code requirements.
43.050G.
1743G.
All of the mitigation measures from the EIR were codified.
Some of them were.
So, I mean, in layman's terms, does that mean that all the smell and noise have been already addressed? So the complaint is void?
I mean, I suppose that if you wanted to consider that tax, that those could be your findings to a motion to approve.
You're saying Trinity County ordinances don't mean shit right now, is what we're getting at, because I followed your guys' rules to the T. Your guys' rules state exactly what's supposed to happen, and it's not happening. You guys can go ahead and vote on it because you guys need to, because if you don't, you're gonna be in violation of your own ordinances. After the vote and you deny it, or whatever, you can address his appeal and put that off of, but your guys' ordinance states right now that it's denied. So
Is it public
you guys are
comment?
talking about that.
Public comment?
And you
No.
shouldn't build.
I make a
on anything that's
subsequent
already-
motion.
No public
You gave him
comment.
a second, turn up his mic and
I
go.
did. I
Yeah,
did that.
you did.
I did.
You're buddy with them, so you gotta recuse yourself from any vote that you're gonna do.
Well, in a small community, sir, we're all friends. I did give you the opportunity to speak. If you'd like to, some of your remaining time to speak, go for it. I'll treat you just as fairly.
Your ordinance states what it states. You can't retroactively change it, so you can't go back and change a law after something has already been done and it's on record. So I'm just stating what the obvious is right here.
Thank you for your comment.
I'd like to make a subsequent motion to vote on the appellate's appeal.
Well, okay.
I mean, that was originally what we were going to do, so.
Great. I'm just thinking,
we're just
so,
motioning to just do it.
yeah, I'm just puzzling through the, so if we voted on so my second substitute motion didn't get a second. The first substitute motion was to just, direct staff to develop an ordinance, which I realize is not the most efficient way to do that. And so maybe if my second wanted to withdraw her second, we would go back to your original motion, Commissioner Flights.
I will withdraw my second.
Okay. So now we're back to, we're just going to vote on,
To vote on the issue.
Are you withdrawing your first subsequent motion?
yes.
Thank you.
Can someone please clarify what the motion is?
And that was going to be my question.
So the motion that Commissioner Flights made was to uphold the director's decision.
And direct staff to essentially, work towards ordinance updates.
Correct. Yeah?
Correct?
Yes, that's how it was proposed, yes.
Okay.
So we have a first and a second. How about a vote?
You want a roll call?
Sure. Yes, please.
Commissioner Fall, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fleets, how do you vote?
Aye.
Excuse me. Commissioner Harper, how do you vote?
So we're voting on the directors.
You're voting to uphold the director's decision to deny the appeal, P 2501,
Nay.
uphold.
Right,
Opposed.
we would,
You're. No, what?
we're voting, yes, we're voting to uphold the director's decision, which would deny the appeal of the
appeal
opposition
of the
letter.
Opposition of the DUP application for the ABR associated with CCL 253.
Deny the appeal of the director's decision to deny the ABR application.
So does that mean that
No, to uphold the director's decision to.
What does that mean for the appellate?
Director's decision to deny the ABR application.
what does that mean for the applicant? He does not get an ABR.
Correct. So with that, his options are go out of business or reconfigure.
Commissioner Harper, your vote?
Still confused.
I'm sorry?
So I'm still confused. We're voting on the appeal or we're voting on the denial of the appeal?
The appeal is the denial of the application.
So the application is what the appellate put forward.
So the CCL applicant, Mr. Wyatt,
Right.
applied for an ABR.
Right.
That ABR received a qualified opposition letter, which based on current code, made it so that.
Denied it.
Denied.
Okay.
So then he subsequently, Mr. Wyatt,
Appealed.
appealed the director's decision to deny.
Right.
So the motion, as I understand it, is to uphold the director's decision denying the ABR application with the direction to staff to work towards ordinance updates.
That's backwards because I'm going to say yes to the appeal, which would be no to
No to the motion.
the motion. So no.
Chair Barrett, how do you vote?
No.
So the motion fails.
The motion fails. How do I say this? The appeal is up.
Still in limbo.
The appeal is denied. Two. Voted for to deny the appeal on the ABR.
So we voted to uphold the director's decision. So the director's decision is is not upheld.
So does 2-2 pass or 2-2 fail?
However,
2-2 fails.
Two fails the motion.
It has to be a majority to be approved. And So a
Go one
tie
way or the other.
fails.
Since we only have one motion,
Is upheld. Is upheld.
No, the appeal is.
The appeal is upheld. I got it backwards.
yeah, that's how I see it.
And you voted to. deny the appeal?
So yeah, as I understand it, if it goes 2-2, then the motion does not pass, right? The motion fails. The motion was to uphold the director's decision to deny. So does that mean that
Yes,
the
Well, how do you-
ABR is approved?
yes.
Are you sure?
In your ordinance.
I agree,
Public comment is closed.
but,
So
but does that automatically mean then that the, just because we didn't uphold the director's decision, does that mean that the applicant gets the ABH?
yes,
Yes.
ABR.
ABR, yes.
I don't really know about
Motion
that.
fails.
You guys are county ordinance.
Public comment is closed, sir.
Okay. You guys gotta learn how to do business, right?
So the
This is definitely an odd one, and I would want to run it by council, so.
I agree.
The motion has failed. The motion has failed. There's no subsequent motion. There's nothing to take action on. We'll clarify with council. We'll bring back a resolution to the next meeting to do ordinance updates as that, well, I guess
That,
that's not even part of it.
yeah, that didn't get a second. It didn't fail, it didn't get a second.
Is there the ability now that the first motion has failed for them to come up with other motions?
No, it failed, so it passed.
Well, can we direct staff, though, to make the resolution for future?
Yeah,
That's how I understand it. I mean, I think you can direct staff outside of this particular item generally to bring back a resolution to update it.
So I guess.
go ahead.
Well, my suggestion to Mr. Wyatt is to let staff check with council and really, make sure before you invest more.
Talk about the issue.
I stopped the gentleman from public comment, Mr. Belanco. I don't think that's fair. Thank you, though. Next item on the agenda. Item F, appeal of director's decision P-24-12.
Good evening, commissioners. As you can see, related to this agenda item, there's a memo dated February 4th, and I'll just read it for those in the public that can't see it. Staff is basically requesting a continuance of P-24-12. Based on new information and in conjunction with county council, staff is requesting this item be continued to a date uncertain pending verification of legal water source on APN 024-070-019-000. The legal water source requirement is codified in Trinity County Code Section 1743060 subsection C. Applicants shall comply with all state laws, including SB 94 regarding surface water, including but not limited to water used for the cultivation of cannabis needs to be sourced on-site from a permitted well surface water diversion, and/or rain catchment system. If using a permitted well, a copy of the Trinity County well permit has been provided. The cultivation of cannabis shall not utilize water that has been or is illegally diverted from any stream, creek, river, or water source. If water is hauled, it shall be for emergencies as defined as a sudden, unexpected occurrence, and a bill of sale shall be kept on file from a water district or legal water source. So just a little bit of additional background. Essentially, I've had an exceptional amount of discussion with county council related to this appeal, and this is how I was directed to proceed, requesting this continuance to a date uncertain, also not publishing a complete staff report, including all of the documentation and staff review. So I just want to clarify that from my perspective, essentially the next step, assuming that, you all essentially concur with our recommendation or request to continue, is that I would suggest that the applicant of the CCL or their agent or attorney reach out to county council, myself, Director Presley, the CAO, to discuss exactly how they would show or verify that they have a legal water source on the parcel. So I think because we've presented the item, we would still open it up to public comment, but.
That was my question. Do we have any public comment?
Thank you for hearing me. I'm Steve Emershai. I'm a Weaverville District Forester for Sierra Pacific Industries. I'm here just for informational purposes. The well in question is on our property. It is not permitted. We had reached out to the owner with a domestic permit, and they never followed up on it. So they don't have any permission to draw from that well because it is on our property. Sierra Pacific does not allow any type of commercial use of wells or domestic water, our stream waters or any water that originates on our property for commercial use. It's just strictly domestic. So anyway, I just wanted to let the Planning Commission know that.
Thank you very much for your comment. Any other public comment in the room?
Tom Blanco, Douglas City. In light of even the last discussion, I might quote one of my favorite novels, the opening line. Someone must have slandered Joseph K. For one morning, without doing anything particularly wrong, he was arrested. That opens the book, The Trial, which is the book that gives our lexicon the word Kafkaesque. Mr. Poblani just read the memo, short memo, with a quote from county ordinance that says there's a way to prove a legal water source. So this is a well permit from Trinity County for this parcel. Signed, paid for from, it was filed in 2022, but it was drilled, you can see on the well completion report, drilled in 2020. So that well has been there. It's approved by the county. As part of the appeal, the appellant, who is not SBI, said, oh, this well is on the neighbor's property. There's a couple of problems with that. We saw this issue come up in the Rowdy Bear appeal that some of you endured several times. This is a civil issue between neighbors. Whether or not the well is there, staff and I stood on the line. If the well is on SPI property, so too is a house, so too is a row of trees that are 40 feet tall, obviously planted to screen the house. I don't know whether or not it is or not, nor can anybody in this room make that determination. That is in a different building, the one next door. That's a court decision. I don't think it merits anybody going to court over that issue. But for now, today, there is a permitted well, a Trinity County permitted well on this property. This applicant has done everything. I don't want to see this get continued into a date uncertain.
Mr. Blanco, I have a question. It's actually a mistake I made. I didn't give the appellant the time to talk. Are you a public comment or are you representing the appellant?
I do represent the appellant.
And that's my mistake. I apologize.
This is public comment, I think, because there's technically, I'm not asking for 10 minutes unless I'm.
No, the last one took a toll. That's my mistake. I should have offered it to the appellant an opportunity to speak, so.
His applicant.
Right, that's correct. I would be the applicant.
Okay.
There's an appellant.
Okay, so. 3.
10
He
minutes.
doesn't, he says he doesn't want to.
Okay, so please ask for this to come back at a date certain with a staff report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Blanco. Again, my apologies. Would the appellant.
Been a long evening.
Yes, sir.
My name is Bob Morris. I represent the appellants. Little Browns Creek Road Improvement Association was started 46 years ago, and I've been the president of it for all but 3 of those years. This is the first time I'm not experienced like all these other people who are speaking with cannabis issues. This didn't go at all how I thought it was going to go. I thought tonight we were not going to, the appeal has a laundry list of issues that I thought there would be a packet that you'd be supplied with maps addressing each of the issues, and that isn't what I'm seeing happening here. I'm seeing a request for continuance, and I assume there'll be a vote on whether you continue it or make a decision tonight. It seems odd to me to make a decision tonight other than to approve the appeal, unless you have that whole packet in front of you to deal with all of the issues that were part of the appeal. So with all that in mind, I would humbly suggest that one clarification, what Mr. Bianco just spoke about. It is a legally permitted well by the County of Trinity, but in the county code, it says needs to be sourced on site. It's not on site, it's on the neighboring parcel. I have a map right here that should have been part of the packet that you don't have apparently. So I brought a copy. I didn't bring 5 copies, 10 copies. A map showing it on SPI property, the certified surveyor stamp on the map that was done at the request of the seller of the property. So I have this here if you're interested. I don't have 10 copies of it because I didn't know that's how this was going to go tonight. So what I'm humbly suggesting is that being as there is no water source on site as proven by this certified survey map, that you approve the appeal, and at such time in the future that the applicant can show a source on site, they could reapply for permit at that time. And that's what I'm humbly suggesting for tonight, for your action.
Thank you for your comment.
Do you have any questions that I could? Do you want to see a copy of the map?
The problem.
We can't ask questions, right?
No, yeah, we
Can I ask
can. The problem is we weren't given the packet because they were going to continue it, so we don't have the
They were
information.
suggesting that you continue it, but that doesn't mean you have to continue it, I don't believe.
But as you correctly stated, we don't have all the information.
So Mr. Plabani mentioned to me that the lawyer for the applicants said that this was probably going to be a civil case decided by the courts. And in my experience, that's a 1 to 3 year process. It makes more sense to me being as the county code says needs to be sourced on site, and it's not on site based on that, to allow the appeal tonight and allow the applicant an opportunity to provide a source on site for a future application.
Okay. Mr. Thank you. Mr. Plabani, do you have some input?
I don't want to take away from Mr. Morris's time. I do have some, my opinion and points of clarification, and I can provide some additional context as to why this was the outcome, as directed from county council. So I'm happy to do that whenever you all feel that is appropriate.
Would you like me to sit down and I can reclaim those minutes to respond if need be, or what's your pleasure?
Sure. I think we're kind of in the blind here because we don't have the information to, so yes, please. Mr. Plabani?
So both the appellant and the applicant have presented that are in direct conflict with one another. So on one hand, we have, as you've been provided copies of, a well permit finalized well completion report. Both of those documents reflect that the well is located on the APN that is the same piece of property as the CCL application. The map that Mr. Morris is referring to indicates, and the comments from the forester from SPI indicate that the well is located several feet over the property line on SPI property. Where we landed with county council was they felt that this really needed to be a civil matter, a legal issue, and they weren't, I think the intent was to not give you a legal issue to resolve, because really that civil dispute is outside of the purview of the planning commission. So in terms of our request to continue to a date uncertain, we do have a mostly completed staff report. So if you would like to continue this to a date certain, as opposed to a date uncertain, and see the full administrative record, and we can have county council on the line, those I think are the only two appropriate outcomes, continuance of some sort, given that you haven't been given a complete staff report.
I think that sounds great.
So does the well permit include a certified survey? I mean, so someone could say this well's on my property. Is part of getting a well permit submitting a certified survey?
I don't believe we have the requirement for a certified survey for pretty much any development within Trinity County.
Okay.
But, right, that's not really, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, so this is like, okay, it's a permit, but it doesn't show that the well's on site.
I think part of, the other reasons potentially that I was directed to proceed in this fashion is that there's some question as to whether or not that surveyed map is legally adequate. And I certainly don't know the answer to that question. I can do my best to, get that information together when we bring this item back to you all. But at this moment, I can't provide any clarification to that.
So the only reason that you're proposing to a date uncertain is because you think it's a civil matter?
And, one of the things that I brought up, and it's interesting because, to Mr. Belanco's statements, that section of the ordinance says, if using a permitted well, a copy of the Trinity County well permit shall be provided.
But also says sourced on site.
It has been provided. And then to Mr. Morris's comments. His contention is that that well, which the final well permit has been provided, it reflects the APN that is the same as the CCL. His contention is that it's not on the parcel. So ultimately, to my best understanding, it becomes a civil dispute. And that is why I think, because of the legal complexities, we were directed to continue it to a date uncertain.
We didn't get to finish public comment, y'all.
So we're still doing technical questions?
Public comment started though, right? Because we had an.
No,
No,
no.
I
Wasn't
admitted
the
that I made a
appellant?
procedural error. Because public comment was given before we gave the applicant and the appellant time to talk. We are now having technical questions with staff, so public comment hasn't commenced yet. Any other technical questions for staff? We still have the applicant's remaining time to talk. We stopped his time to allow Director Plablani to give us some background. Appellant. So if you would like your remaining minutes.
It'll be brief. I don't I'm a lifetime contractor. I've been in the trades all my life. I don't understand how where a well driller thinks a property line is, or where a county environmental health officer who comes out to inspect it thinks a property line is, would take precedent over a California certified licensed surveyor where he says the line is. And I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name.
Polanco.
Mr. Belanco's comment about the house and trees being off the property, that's not correct. The surveyor showed me the corners where the lines are, and you eyeball from one to the other. The trees are barely on the applicant's property. The branches are over, but the trees are planted on the applicant's property. The house is fully on the applicant's property. It's just the well that's off, according to certified licensed surveyor, not the well driller, not the county environmental health officer, but a certified surveyor.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
Public comment?
At this time, I'd like to open it up to public comment. Is there any public comment in the room? Any public comment on Zoom?
Go ahead, Lisa.
So I just want to understand before my time starts that the SPI forester has already spoken public comment, correct?
Again, this was my mistake. I'm saying I made a mistake.
No, I understand. I just wanted to make sure he's not given more time.
Correct.
Okay. So, Lisa Wright, Lewiston, we are the applicant's agent as well. We have a final well permit from Trinity County. And it becomes rather immaterial, actually, if it's on the parcel line, which an alleged survey might indicate. Although when I stood on the property, the flags, if you drew a line between the flags, it was inside the property. So this is rather a sketchy kind of survey. It's not kind of certified. It's not recorded. It's not a legal document. There's no date on it when it was done. And it's interesting that the appellant would say that it was requested by the seller of the property. How would he have possession of that? How was he able to stand on and see what the corners were if he wasn't trespassing? Or it's just very odd kind of situation. If that was across the line, SPI has a certain number of years, 3 years actually, to allege that that is not a properly permitted well. That time has passed. We requested legal counsel from SPI to contact us. I have no indication that the forester from SPI has any authority to legally represent SPI. We have no record of any contact attempts. We have no record of his claim that there's no commercial use of wells. So there's just a lot here to unpack. It's very disturbing and very concerning And I don't know what standing even Little Browns Creek Road Improvement Association has to bring this forward. Do they represent SPI? We have nothing to indicate that. This is just an injustice being committed against another cannabis farmer who's been in this process since 2020. 2020, she got through her ABR, she got through everything. She got through the TA lawsuit, and here we are, once again trying to start someone from a legal business operation. I'll further state that the appellant also was overheard in a public place stating that he had somebody who wanted to buy that parcel and was just trying to drive her out. There's a lot of messy stuff here. There's no aggrieved party. SPI has not legally contested this well, and their time to do that has passed. So you don't have the full packet. I don't know what you do as a commission, but this is messy. But it doesn't need to be. She's met all the requirements. She has a final approved well by Trinity County that has not been contested by anyone with any legal documents or any kind of legal process. So it stands as a final permitted allowable use and water source. So my opinion, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for your comment. Is there any other comment on Zoom? Okay, I'm going to close public comment. And again, I apologize for my procedural error in learning. Bring it back to the commission for discussion.
Motion.
Motion and discussion.
First of all, I want to disclose that since I am the District 1 Planning Commissioner, Mr. Morris did contact me. I understand that there are a lot of other issues besides the fact that the well is off-site. It is a critical water resource overlay zone. There are issues with the road, which is one of the reasons the Road Association appealed. And so I would like to move that the Planning Commission direct staff to bring P 2412 back to the March regular meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I will also say I was approached to discuss, but we did not discuss this topic.
We have a second.
Commissioner Harper. Vote? Yes, please.
Commissioner Harper, how do you vote?
Yay.
Commissioner Fall, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Flights, how do you vote?
Aye.
How do you vote?
Aye.
Pass to bring the item back to the March 13th meeting.
Okay. Reports. Do any planning commissioners have any reports? Go ahead.
You can go first.
Well, I have several questions for Director Presley, but I hate to steal his thunder and ask him questions and he goes, well, we already got that figured out, so maybe I can just ask later. Okay.
Any other commissioner reports?
So the Architectural Review Committee for Weaverville has met since we have last adjourned. And a lot of the conversations surround communication and education materials for the Weaverville Historic District. And so those have been in production for probably over 6 months now and are continuing along. And we hope to release these shortly to the public to help communicate the value of our historic district and the current ordinance that is in place and how to comply with the ordinance or how to request Bella, I'm losing the correct terminology at the moment. How to request or to apply for, what is the right word? It's not a variance. What's the right? Thank you. So to apply for an architectural review, to have small deviations from the ordinance. I don't know, deviation is probably not the right word either. However, if you're designing a sign and you don't know if it fully complies, you can apply for a review and we can help you make sure it complies.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Harper?
Nothing else.
I've been, as District 3 representative, I've been approached again by business owner, Mr. Mearson in Hayfork, in regards to his property division. Do you potentially have any updates on that?
Yeah, when did he contact you?
About 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago?
Yeah, it was recorded, the final map was recorded on December 30th of 2024.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So it's all taken care of.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Project closed.
Thank you. What about Deputy Director of Community Development? Reports?
That's not me. I was just getting close to the mic.
Oh. Okay.
But that's not.
Go ahead and go first.
So since we all had you, since we have you here tonight, we had a general plan update meeting this morning. So I thought it was an opportune time to give you guys various updates on what's going on with the general plan efforts and zoning code efforts. So we'll send this out to you in an email too, so you can have the dates written and available next to your calendars. But as far as the housing element, we had to reschedule last week's meeting due to the power outage. So that has been rescheduled to have a Board of Supervisors meeting and Planning Commission. Well, it's going to be at the regular Board of Supervisors meeting on March 4th, and the Planning Commissioners are invited to that. So it'll be a joint meeting since you guys are all there, but it's at a regularly scheduled board meeting. Approximately, we're going to start at around 11 whenever the board meeting ends. And it's going to go approximately until 1 p.m. And that's to weigh in on the draft housing element before we send it to HCD for their formal comments. I think I got that right. Yeah. Then the general plan study sessions are going to be, which will be joint sessions between the Board of Supervisors and the Planning Commission. That'll be over 2 days in June. So right now that's scheduled for June 10th and 11th, and that's going to be from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's going to be fairly intensive because we're going to be going through all of the public comments and the agency comments. And we're going to be going through staff's recommended actions on those, and we'll need direction from the Board and Planning Commission on what the requested changes will be. We will also be going through the requested land use changes that were submitted through the public commenting period, land use designation changes. We won't be doing rezones at that time. And the general plan itself is still on track. So that was an exciting thing that we like to hear every other week at those meetings. And then the zoning code efforts we're fully into it. Staff has already went through the table of contents. Our general plan team is working through that. We're going to do another workshop internally to get through those so they can keep moving on the technical aspects of zoning code. Part 1 of zoning code, there will be a special meeting for part 1 of zoning code for just the Planning Commission on I'm sorry, I didn't write down the date. That is unhelpful. We're gonna have to get it to you in your emails, but I believe it's June 12th. Because it'll be 10th, 11th, and 12th. So get ready for the 10th, 11th, and 12th, because we're getting the most out of our consultants as we can, because they're gonna be staying with us those 3 days. And then part one will be administrative provisions, which includes non-conforming uses, permitting types, admin provisions, general development standards, which means like parking and height and various things like that. So it's gonna get fairly technical. And that'll be for part one and the June 12th meeting. And then part two, because we're chunking them, it's a large effort, will be sometime in August, and we're not sure on that date yet. And then there will be public community workshops. We're not sure how many or where quite yet, but we just want to let you know that will be sometime in fall. That's all I have for the community or the general plan update and the zoning code updates, and the housing element update. But I also wanted to let you guys know, I have other project numbers here. We keep a running list of where our projects are at every single month by type. But just the highlights that we've been able to do, is that we've been able to, some permits will never come before you, right? So there's certain types of like lot line adjustments are approved by Ed. Once they meet everything, they're ministerial in nature. We've completed 2 of those. At the end of last year, we completed the final map. We just completed this tentative map today. We're gearing up to finish another final map that's been in process since 2017. So I just wanted to give you guys some positive updates there. Yeah, that's all I have.
Do you have any dates for like the community plan, the feedback on where the community plans?
We haven't talked about the community plans in a minute, so I'll have to talk to the team about that and try and gear that up for our next planning commission.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bella. Mr. Priestley.
Yes, thank you, Bella. That was very good. I know Bella mentioned it earlier, but just putting it out there to the public in case, it hasn't been circulated. We did hire a new assistant planner. She has come along quite nicely, very astute, very quick learner. So we're very appreciative of her being on the team. She was a transplant, so she came from somewhere else and just moved up here and wanted to contribute. So that was very good for us. So as I was going over what I wanted to give you as updates tonight, this is for the public and this is for the planning commissioners as well. The broadband expansion, I wanted to touch on this. This is coming. Anybody that's been driving on 299, they know that those lines have been put in. They do the little beside the road and the right of way on Caltrans, and it's about 99% complete. And when that gets complete, they're going to do some testing and then they're going to be turning that thing on. But for our grant, for the LOTA grant that we got, we're actually producing feasibility studies and locations where wires can be ran, fiber can be ran to Hyam Palm and Post Mountain and Forest Glen. And so that's been an ongoing effort for a little over a year now. So I just wanted to put that out there that is happening. Another thing that's going to be coming here fairly soon, maybe within the next few months, is going to be a transition to a digital platform for permits. We're looking to do kind of the same thing that cannabis has been doing, kind of spreading that around. So it's going to be cannabis over into planning, over into environmental health, over into the building department. And it's going to be much more public friendly so that when they go on the website, they can actually apply for permits online. They don't even have to come into the office. So there's going to be a lot of build out in that over the coming weeks. We're still in the production phase on that, where I think cannabis is a lot closer than the rest of the department is. We did get the clean energy grant. So we were awarded $100,000 and it was just awarded this past week to Flora. And they're going to be producing a feasibility study to get clean energy to the Post Mountain area. I'm not going in order here. So the next thing would be the broadband build out Wi-Fi for the Weaverville area. We were contacted and there's efforts underway for Frontier to actually build out high-speed Wi-Fi here in the county, starting in Weaverville. That's going to be coming in the next few months. Also, we're looking into getting some imagery. So real-time imagery purchases from a company called Planet Imagery so that we can get pictures from anywhere in the county. So that's really good because, you know, the SO, they do flyovers. Sometimes our code compliance has to go out and go to different sites and everything. But it's really difficult to kind of pinpoint where you're actually going to go beforehand, and, you know, because you can't see through the trees or the hills and all that stuff. So we're looking at partnering up with Planet Imagery so that we can have real-time views of anywhere in the county when we desire it. So there may have been some quietness as we've had these months where there hasn't been planning commissions, or it seems like it's quiet with projects and all that, but there's a lot of stuff going on in the background. And I know just to kind of highlight what Bella does, when she asked if she could mention some of these things tonight, I think that's an outstanding thing for her to be able to do, because planning in and of itself has just went leaps and strides and bounds over the last 6 to 7 months. And so I'm really, really impressed with what Bella's brought. That general plan update in and of itself is just a monster. It's a beast. But then when you throw in the zoning and what's happening, and you throw in the housing element update, and then you throw in all of the projects that just never seem to stop. You know, a lot of times it's drinking from a fire hose, and I know she doesn't get the accolades that, you know, she really deserves on that, but there's a lot going on. And also with Debbie, you know, and I'm specifically talking about planning because we're at the Planning Commission. But, you know, Debbie is one of those rock stars that she's the hub of planning, and everything touches her hands and she takes it in off the counter. She coordinates things, she does PRAs. So I just wanted to take a few minutes there to just kind of mention how proud I am of planning, all the divisions, but, you know, planning can really be highlighted during the Planning Commission. So I appreciate your time. And if you have any questions or anything, just let me know.
Valentine's Day was last week, but we're really feeling the love. Does anybody have any questions for the director?
I just have one quick go back, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
We recognize Todd Heaton, but we have not yet mentioned Don Ellis, who
Yeah. Commissioner
also
Ellis.
served with us, and I appreciate his service and want to thank him for that, and wish him the best in his endeavors.
Absolutely. Love serving with Don.
I did have a couple questions. So, the Board of Supervisors in December drafted or introduced a agriculture building ordinance. And then there was both the ag building ordinance and the tiny homes went out to the fire departments for questions. And I was wondering, are those going to come to the Planning Commission? Those, because they seem like, you know, they have zoning issues and.
So as far as the tiny home ordinance, I did a comprehensive review on that this week. So planning put in the time for that, and well, me and Angel. So Cody's going to review that. I don't know what the overall timeline is for the tiny home ordinance. I know he's getting some pressure to get that through. As far as the ag ordinance, Ed, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that either the council or the CAO, you know, quoted at a board meeting that it would not go to the Planning Commission.
So I got an email saying that Trent said it would come to the Planning Commission.
Fully take it to the Planning Commission, but we're just following direction.
The email was dated January 15th from Supervisor Lutweiler. I reached out to Trent regarding the ag building email, and he said Trent was able to confirm that this was informal. It would go to the planning commission because it does have zoning.
That's new to us, so.
Oh, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
No, I can verify, and at any point you have any of those questions, all you gotta do is email me anyways, but I can definitely double check with Trent tomorrow.
Well, I think, Dan and I get the emails about, from the building department so that we can provide comments from a fire perspective. But yeah, it does seem like both of those should have some input from the planning commission. Especially the tiny homes one seems like it's preceding the housing element being adopted. It seems a little backwards.
It can happen at any time if someone starts the ordinance, We don't have to have a program to have it happen. But I see your point. I think there's just been a lot of, because it is a program in the current draft housing element, but it was also discussed in the 2019 housing element. So we're also following up on that effort. So the tiny home ordinance will come before you. I've confirmed that with Cody. And then I'm going to do my second review on the ag ordinance next week. And zoning, I believe, is mentioned in that. So I would find it to be appropriate for it to come before you, before the board.
Yeah, because there are specific zones that are mentioned in that ordinance. Yeah. Okay. Well, those were my questions. I was a little confused why that we hadn't heard anything about those.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely check on them and send you an email. It's all good. Also, Director Plabani would like to take a minute to give an update.
Absolutely.
I'll keep it brief. We haven't publicized it widely, so I just wanted to make it known to all of you and the public that we did receive word from the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development that we have received an additional $500,000 from our most recent grant application for the Cannabis Equity Program in Trinity County. And that, as you're aware, over a year ago, really at this point, we were working and had public meetings on the first draft of the cannabis ordinance updates. I have been working on that, and we do hope to, bring a fully updated second draft to the Planning Commission in the not too distant future. Looks like we put a few items on my plate this evening. So
You're welcome.
I was hoping that we would get that to you for the second March meeting, but I am not certain of how that will work at this point. But just wanted to let you know that is on the horizon. And in terms of the discussions we've had, amongst staff and with the general plan update team, kind of the intent was to get through, the second draft, get it approved and adopted so that when we get into actually updating zoning code, we have a recent updated cannabis ordinance that they can then include into the new format. My hope was that rather than having cannabis be a topic that sucks the air out of the room, as it has done for many years, that will hopefully enable, the commission and the board respectively to consider more closely, some of the other zoning district provisions that I'm hopeful will be contemplated that are primarily unrelated to cannabis. So that's my update. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So do you think, maybe I should just go to Muni code, but I mean, if you were able, would it be helpful to other commissioners to give us copies of the sections of 1743 that have changed recently, the Lewiston opt-out and the administrative buffer reduction? Because right now, the folders that we have just have the old stuff in it. Doesn't have all the newer changes.
And unfortunately, those newer changes, such as the administrative buffer reduction, are not on Municode. So that's something that I can work to address, but at least as of my most recent looking at Municode 1743, was it 060, hadn't been included yet, or was it 051, pardon me. So that kind of brings up a question that I have for you all, in terms of my thinking was, when we put together the updated first draft, we kind of had a executive summary, kind of as a cover page and sort of describing, what changes were being made, what was being consolidated. So my thinking was to expand upon that executive summary and provide, obviously a copy of the current ordinances, but then also just call out highlights of what was being changed, kind of to what you're requesting, Carol, with staff commentary, because a lot of what's changing, a lot of what's being proposed to change outside of the specific provisions is really just consolidation. So one of the things that, from my perspective, is overly cumbersome in the way that the current ordinances are constructed is that you have sections that are called application or sections that are called, performance standards. In the existing performance standard sections, we have application requirements. And then we have redundant code sections in many of the standalone ordinances as they were developed piece by piece. So a big chunk of what we're doing is essentially consolidating the ordinances so that the application sections are more consistent with application requirements. And then my thinking is that the zoning district specific provisions as it relates to commercial cannabis as an allowable or conditionally allowed use in any specific zoning district, that is something that will be more specifically addressed in the zoning code update as part of the updates to those zoning districts and their provisions, rather than the way that we currently have the cannabis ordinance, where we've thrown in a hodgepodge of this will be allowed here or this isn't allowed here, and it's not consistent across the different ordinances. So that's one of the major intents, aside from, some changes to the specific language, but also just consolidating it so that it's more clear and concise and digestible.
Any other questions? Sweet, meeting adjourned.
Ed. 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 Who controls the start time for these meetings, and is it stated somewhere they have to be at 6 p.m.?